Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
Okay, let's unpack this story. We are diving deep into the infamous Silk Road, the original online black market, and tracing this really dramatic arc
Yeah.
from its birth as this kind of technological utopia to its huge takedown, and now, just recently, the highly controversial political pardon of its founder, Ross Ulbricht.
It's such a fascinating story because it's not just, a crime story. It's really a foundational moment for digital finance and for cyber policing.
Right.
Silk Road, or SR 1.0, it launched way back in 2011, and it just instantly proved that this idea, a decentralized, anonymous global marketplace, was actually possible. It basically laid out the blueprint for everything that came after.
And the man behind that blueprint, an American founder, Ross Ulbricht, was operating under this almost literary pseudonym, Dread Pirate Roberts.
From The Princess Bride, yeah.
Exactly. And he didn't just, create a website. He built an entire system, an ecosystem, really,
Yeah.
designed for ultimate anonymity.
That combination is really the key here. I mean, you might be wondering, how could a site selling illicit goods so openly just operate for 2 years?
Without getting shut down immediately.
Right. And the architecture, it really relied on two very specific anonymous technologies.
Okay, let's get technical for a moment, but let's keep it approachable. What were these foundational elements?
So first, there was access. You couldn't just find the site on Google. It was only available through the Tor network, the Onion router.
Right.
Think of Tor as this ultra-private internet tunnel. Normally, your computer connects straight to a server. With Tor, your request gets encrypted, and then it bounces randomly through at least 3 different volunteer servers across the globe before it even hits its destination.
So it's layered, like an onion. That's where the name comes from. It strips away the layers, so you can't trace where a user or a server is.
Exactly. So the location of the site is hidden, and the identity of the user is hidden.
But, you can't run an international black market on PayPal.
Right. And that brings us to the second crucial piece, the currency. Every single transaction was done using Bitcoin.
And at the time, Bitcoin was really designed to be as anonymous as cash.
It was. For a lot of people, Silk Road was the first kind of mass-scale proof that Bitcoin could actually work. And law enforcement, they saw the threat immediately. We have a quote from an HSI director, Peter Edge, calling sites like this the Wild West of the internet.
And the scale really justified that name. I mean, we have the actual anatomy of this shadow economy. Can you put the scale into perspective for us?
It was immense. Between its launch in 2011 and when it was taken down in July 2013, our sources show transactions totaling over 9.5 million Bitcoins.
9.5 million.
At the time, with Bitcoin's value back then, that was about $1.2 billion in sales. Ulbricht's operation took a cut, about $80 million in commissions.
$1.2 billion in a completely unregulated, encrypted space. This wasn't a few hobbyists. This was a massive, thriving economy.
It really was. You're talking nearly 150,000 buyers and almost 4,000 vendors. And, while the inventory was vast, about 70% of the products were illicit drugs. It's interesting that DPR did try to maintain some kind of moral code.
I remember that. He was trying to enforce rules in a lawless space. What did the terms of service actually prohibit?
Well, the rules banned anything meant to harm or defraud, so that included things like child pornography, stolen credit cards, and, crucially, assassinations. Weapons were also barred, though. There was a short-lived sister site in 2012 called The Armory that did sell firearms.
So in this sort of libertarian marketplace, you can't call the cops if your drugs don't show up. How did Ulbricht build trust between all these anonymous strangers?
He basically coded his own justice system. He used 2 really clever mechanisms. First, an automated escrow payment system.
So it holds the buyer's Bitcoin until the order is confirmed.
Exactly. If there was a dispute, DPR acted as the final judge. And second, an automated review system for vendors, just like you'd see on Amazon or eBay.
So reputation was everything.
It was the only thing. It was essential for a system built on zero trust.
It's like they built a digital state with its own judiciary made of code. But, even a fortress of anonymity can come crashing down.
Yeah.
So the big question is, how did they get him?
The takedown of Silk Road 1.0 and Ulbricht's arrest in October 2013 was. It was incredibly high drama, but it was solved by something surprisingly low-tech.
He was arrested in a public library, right, in San Francisco?
Yeah, by the FBI while he was logged into the site on his laptop. But the breakthrough, the thing that led them to him, It wasn't some amazing Tor-cracking hack. It was a simple mistake.
A huge operational security mistake.
One of the biggest in modern cybercrime history. The key lead came from an IRS agent, Gary Alford. And he wasn't doing high-level decryption. He was just searching Google for early mentions of the Silk Road URL.
No way.
He found a post on a public forum from a user named Altoid. He followed that trail, and it led him straight to an email address that Ulbricht used personally. It connected the founder to the Dread Pirate Roberts.
That is the digital equivalent of wearing a name tag while robbing a bank. It is unbelievable that the guy who built this anonymous empire was taken down by such a basic footprint.
Exactly. And, the technical side is interesting, too. The FBI claimed they found the server's real IP address in Iceland because of data leaked from a CAP-TCHA.
The little I'm not a robot tests.
Right. But IT security experts have since raised some serious questions about whether that's even technically possible. So the server was seized, Ulbricht was caught, and the trial moved very quickly.
And the trial, that started in January 2015. Ulbricht admitted founding the site, but he claimed he handed it off to someone else almost immediately.
A claim that prosecutors just systematically dismantle using chat logs and documents they found on his laptop. They proved he was Dread Pirate Roberts all along.
And the sentence that came down, it was just unprecedented for a nonviolent crime.
Yeah. May 2015, he was convicted on 7 felonies, including narcotics trafficking and running a continuing criminal enterprise. The sentence was 5 concurrent sentences, including 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus another 40 years.
2 life sentences. The judge, Catherine Forrest, she was explicit. She said the sentence was meant to deter copycats. But what was the legal justification for something so extreme?
It was that continuing criminal enterprise charge. It's often called the Kingpin statute, and it's usually for major drug cartel leaders. It allowed the court to basically hold Ulbricht responsible for every single sale made by every vendor on his site.
So they aggregated everything under him.
Everything. And with that $1.2 billion figure, the judge decided that the only sentence was one that ensured he would never get out.
But the whole story, the whole narrative of justice, got incredibly complicated because of a massive scandal inside the investigation.
Oh, this is where the story gets really dark. Our sources detail the shocking revelation that 2 federal agents involved in the case, one from the DEA, one from the Secret Service, were later charged with serious crimes themselves.
What did they do?
They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin that Ulbricht had transferred to them while they were undercover. They were convicted of wire fraud and money laundering.
So you have the founder of the digital black market getting life, while the agents investigating him are stealing millions in the same digital currency. The irony is just unbelievable.
And it severely tainted the government's case. It gave Ulbricht's supporters the argument they needed to frame the whole investigation as corrupt. This detail became central to the push for his pardon later on.
And the government also seized a fortune. The FBI initially got 26,000 Bitcoins and later found another 144,000 on his computer. That was worth nearly $30 million back then.
But despite that massive sentence, the judge's goal of deterrence, it failed almost immediately. The darknet was like a digital hydra.
It struck back instantly. Silk Road 2.0 launched just 1 month after the first site was shut down.
Yeah, November 2013, run by former admins. And they had their own crisis pretty quickly. In February 2014, SR 2.0 got hacked because of a vulnerability in Bitcoin called transaction malleability.
Okay, break that down for us. What exactly is transaction malleability?
So essentially, it allowed an attacker to slightly change a transaction's unique ID before it was confirmed on the blockchain. The server would see the original ID, think the money was sent, and ship the product.
But the money was never actually sent.
The attacker could then use the altered ID to make it look like the original transaction failed, so they effectively stole $2.7 million in escrowed Bitcoins.
Wow. But the admins, they actually tried to make it right. Right. They used their commissions to pay back half the money.
They did, which says a lot about how important reputation was. But the clock was ticking. The biggest law enforcement effort ever was already underway. Operation Anonymous.
And this wasn't just a single FBI operation. This was a truly global response.
That's the key part, the coordination. Operation Anonymous, November 6th, 2014, was a massive coordinated action. U.S. agencies and law enforcement from about 16 foreign nations, all coordinated through Europol. They took down hundreds of hidden sites at once.
How do they even do that? How do you target so many onion addresses at the same time?
Well, the exact method is still classified, but the general idea is that they collaborated to exploit vulnerabilities in the Tor infrastructure itself. They hit the core servers, and in one synchronized strike, they seized over 400 Tor website addresses.
And the stuff they found on those markets went way beyond just drugs.
Oh, absolutely. The sources list some incredible examples. A market called Executive Outcomes was selling firearms, assault rifles, even offered to remove serial numbers. Another one, Fake Real Plastic, sold counterfeit credit cards encoded with stolen data.
And fake passports, I remember.
Fake ID, yeah. Offering high-quality fake passports from several countries, it just painted a very clear picture of the scale of the threat.
And that raid resulted in the arrest of Blake Benthall, the alleged operator of Silk Road 2.0 DEF CON. So at the time, it really looked like law enforcement had finally solved the darknet problem.
They had won a major battle, but, not the war. And the story of Ross Ulbricht was still far from over.
Which brings us to the final chapter, his political freedom. After 11 years and 3 months of a double life sentence, Ross Ulbricht got a full and unconditional pardon from President Donald J. Trump on January 21st, 2025.
And this wasn't just, a commutation. The pardon covered everything. The life terms, the concurrent sentences, and it even wiped out that massive $183 million forfeiture.
And politically, this fulfilled a direct campaign pledge Trump made at the Libertarian National Convention. This was deeply tied to the growing influence of the libertarian and crypto movements.
It was. Ulbricht always cited libertarian idealism as his motivation. His supporters successfully framed his life sentence as cruel and unusual punishment, a prime example of government overreach.
And that argument got a huge boost from the scandal with the corrupt federal agents, right? Made the pardon much easier to justify politically.
It became the central rallying cry that the system itself had failed and needed to be corrected.
For the crypto community, this was a massive symbolic victory. I mean, Silk Road was the first real killer app for Bitcoin.
And the pardon happened alongside a bunch of other crypto-friendly moves by the administration. The market reacted instantly. The price of Bitcoin surged, trading over $100,000 after the announcement. Ulbricht himself posted a video saying, "Donald Trump is a man of his word."
And the official commentary from the president was, well, it's highly charged. He criticized the scum that worked to convict him as part of the weaponization of government.
So for his supporters, this wasn't just clemency, it was complete redemption.
Which raises the question of legacy. We started with law enforcement calling this the Wild West. We saw a billion-dollar economy taken down, and we saw its founder get a life sentence specifically to deter others.
And yet, as the source material makes clear, despite that sentence and that massive global crackdown, even larger marketplaces just popped up after Silk Road's closure. The deterrence it didn't work.
The key takeaway here seems to be this constant, unresolved tension between tools for digital anonymity and the growing sophistication of global enforcement.
Right. Operation Anonymous proved that enforcement can disrupt this space, but the pardon adds this whole political ideological layer to it, which leaves a really important question for you, the listener, to think about.
Yeah. If the whole point of that life sentence was deterrence, and deterrence clearly failed, was the sentence itself the core injustice that just demanded a political correction? Or does this pardon reinforce the idea that systems built on strong encryption are just fundamentally harder to police, suggesting that in this battle between encryption and enforcement, the fight is never really over?
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.